All right, guys, let's review for your quiz. Last week we took a look at equipment used in dosage measurements. So we took a look at chapters 8, 9, and 10, focusing mainly on things like medication labels and those syringes. And so today, on today's quiz, you may see a label like the one you see on your screen. And just to talk to you guys a little bit about any medication labels and things that we discussed last week, some things to look out for. The name of the medication itself could be a generic name, it could be a brand name. And really the main thing to look out for is either the presence or absence of a little registered symbol. So drawing that again would look somewhat like that, and it would be somewhere around here. This particular medication does not have that on this label. Because of that, this is a generic medication. So in this question, I may ask you, what is the generic name of this drug? If I asked you what was the brand name is actually not listed at all on this medication. So it would just be a not shown if that question was even asked. More than likely, if it didn't have a brand on it, I probably wouldn't ask you for the brand name or the trade name. On this one, again, another thing that we could look for, another big thing that you'll notice is the dosage strength. And the dosage strength, or sometimes called the supply dosage, just tells us how much is in one dose or one supply of that medication. This medication is a tablet medication, as you can tell. Also, from just underneath the name, it does say it's tablets, and it tells us real big on this logo and also over here that in every tablet we're going to see 2.5 milligrams of medication. And again, and that dosage strength is usually written on there pretty large, easy to spot on any logo as well. So like especially on this one, as you can see, it's kind of written everywhere. And like I said, that is just how much is in every dose of medicine. And any tablet, a dose is always considered one tablet. A lot of times it'll tell us how much is in the package, so how many tablets come in the bottle or the box or whatever it may be, and you guys can see that down at the bottom. It does tell us that one dosage card of 30 tablets in here, so there are 30 tablets in this particular box. Also tells us a couple different things. We did talk about how the National Drug Code number is easy to spot because it's always pointed out as NDC, and you can see that up there on the top, and it does say NDC for that National Drug Code number. We talked about a lot of different things. We talked about the manufacturer. Manufacturer is the name of the company that produces the medication. And it looks like on this medicine, the manufacturer is not on there. It does say where you would see manufactured by and packed. Oh, there it is. Yeah, Lupin Limited is the name of that manufacturer on there. So you do see that. Sometimes it's in fine print. Sometimes they put a company logo somewhere big on the medication, and this one it's just somewhere in the fine print. So that's again who produced this medication. Let's see, there's all kinds of different warnings on medication. So sometimes I'll ask for some specific warnings. If I ask you guys for the prescription warning, that's what you guys see right here, the RX only. That particular warning is advising people that is only available by a prescription. You can't just walk in and buy this particular drug over the counter. So if I asked you for a prescription warning, it will either be written out as this medication is available by prescription only, or the most popular thing is to put RX only on the logo. So be on the lookout for that if I ask for a prescription warning. Any other type of warning you guys can see over here on the side, there is a keep away from children. There is a storage warning, so telling us to keep it at a certain temperature as well as protecting it from moisture, freezing, excessive heat. So I may ask, if there's any specific storage instructions for this particular drug. Anything like that. Sometimes it tells us, do not separate from plastic shell. There's all kinds of different warnings, and I would be specific if I asked you for a specific warning. Sometimes I just ask, are there any particular warnings on this label? And then if that's the question that's asked, you can give me any of those, and that would be okay. But again, if I ask specifically for a prescription warning, I'm looking for that one right there. So be on the lookout for that. Taking a And just another logo. I want to show you guys another, not logo, but another label, I should say. I just want to show you guys one more of these just to go through, make sure we feel pretty good with it. As this one you guys can see pretty clearly, this one is, again, because of that little symbol, that guy right there, tells us that Thorazine is a trade name. It's a brand name. So if I asked you guys for a brand or a trade name, then that's what I'm looking for. The generic name, again, always has to be written on that label somewhere, so you guys can see written just underneath that chloropromazine is hydrochloric injection is simply just the generic name for this medication. So you guys would write that as the generic. The manufacturer, as I mentioned on the last slide, the manufacturer sometimes puts their company logo on there, so you can see real big down there that SmithKline Beecham is down there, but also over here in the fine print you can see manufactured for SmithKline Beecham Pharmaceuticals. So if I asked you guys who the manufacturer of this drug, hopefully that one's pretty easy to spot. Let's see, the dosage strength, like I said, sometimes written pretty big on there, tells us how much is contained in every single, or in a single dose of this medication. This is a liquid medication. Remember last week we talked about how in liquid medications it will be pointed out sometimes as that slash so many milliliters, which means per milliliter, that's how much drug comes in so many milliliters of that particular medication. So here in Thorazine, you guys will see that in every dose, so in this case 1 milliliter is considered a dose, they will receive 20 milligrams of that pure medication, that pure Thorazine. So that's the supply dosage on that one would be 25 milligrams per milliliter. If I ask then how much is in this particular bottle or vial here, you can see, so the total volume that I'm looking for does tell us that we're going to get 10 doses out of this. It is a 10 multi-dose vial. So again, even though 1 milliliter is considered a single dose, they're going to be able to take this 10 different times then based on the fact that there are 10 total milliliters in this vial here. So if I ask for the total volume, that's what we're looking for on that one. NDC number also kind of faded, kind of hard to see on this one, but you can see the National Drug Code number is listed just above that name. Any particular storage warnings, you can see it does tell us to store below 86 degrees Fahrenheit, do not freeze, protect from light. So there are a few storage warnings on here. A prescription warning, again, I mentioned that sometimes it's actually written out instead of written out as just RX only. Sometimes it just actually writes it because they have room for it, and it says federal law prohibits dispensing without a prescription. So it is written out, and it still means the same thing, that prescription only. The other thing we discussed last week, over to the next slide here, we did talk about some different types of syringes. The main thing we focused on were the different sizes that you might see based on what needs to be administered. And so in sometimes some of these different sizes, we have to, based on what's needed to be given, we have to take a look at them and see, like for instance, if I only need to give 1 milliliter of medication, I could use, this one, because again, here's 1 milliliter, so it'd be easy to draw that out. This one's pretty common if we're given anything less than a milliliter, because again, here's where 1 milliliter falls on that syringe. So sometimes giving less, like if we're giving half a milliliter or 0.4 milliliters, which would fall right there, we would give less than a milliliter on that one. We typically wouldn't use, if we only had to give a milliliter, we wouldn't use these other two down here, these 5 or 10 milliliter syringes, as again, here's 1 milliliter and here's 1 milliliter on that one. So it would be a little less accurate to be able to draw that medication into that syringe. It'd be a lot easier on the first two that you guys see there. And that's the main difference, is that we use different syringes based on what medication is being given or the amount of medication that needs to be given. So again, what you guys are looking at there on this slide is the first one. You guys have a 1 milliliter syringe, so you may be asked to administer 0.2 or 0.4 or 0.7 milliliters, something that starts with that decimal point. So if I asked you guys to administer 0.7, we know that that would fall right here, whereas 0.8 is next. Now, in between, since this is 0.7 and 0.8, very, very similar to halfway between 7 and 8, would be 7.5 or 7.5. Since these are 0.7 and 0.8, halfway between would be 0. Well, if I could write this out over here, 0.75. So that's what this point is right here, that halfway between, oh, whoops, I am on the wrong point. Sorry, guys. Halfway between 0.7 and 0.8 would be right there at that halfway mark, halfway between those two. So what happens on these types of syringes, if you're asked to, and you see a number that has a hundredths place, then the easiest thing to do would be to go to the tenths place and then count a couple down to the hundredth. So what I mean by that is if I asked you guys to administer, let's say 0.45. Sorry, this is the only spot I have over here on the side. But if I asked you to count 0.45, now that's similar to the 0.75 I just asked you guys. We know that's going to be just halfway between the 0.4 and the 0.5. But you can just start at the 0.4, so right here, go to the 0.4, which is going to be right here on that syringe, and then just count 5 lines down, and that's going to be halfway there. Whereas if I asked you guys to administer, say, 0.62 milliliters on that syringe. Then again, very similar, you can just go down to the 0.6, which is right here, and then count 2 more down to that, because we're starting with this, 0.6, and then you go down to this 2. So again, 6.2 would be somewhere in here. Sorry, that's kind of hard to see on this particular syringe, or this particular picture here. But that's your 1 milliliter syringe. So your 1 milliliter syringe, you're seeing those drawn off that way. So let's take a look at the next 2 syringes then. On the next 2 syringes, we're looking at the difference between a 2.5 milliliter syringe, and your 3 milliliter syringes look like that too. And then the second one is a 5 milliliter syringe. So showing you guys the difference between those two, the biggest thing you guys can see is that the first one, or the second one that you guys are looking at on this picture here, you see that they're counted off in halves, those numbers that are written on there, so the bigger lines there. So you see half, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5. And then on the next syringe, those are counted off in ones, so you're seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. So the biggest thing to see here, and to really kind of see the big difference between these two, is look at your distance between your whole numbers. So say, for instance, I'm looking at the distance between 1 and 2. So on this syringe, here's 1 and here's 2. Whereas on that other syringe there, you're seeing here's 1 and here's 2. You can see it's a lot closer together than the one on the first one that has the yellow lines drawn on it. So what happens is those increments in between on this one, on this syringe right here, the second one on your on your slide here, and the one that we're talking about at this moment, we're done with this one as far as talking about that one. So we're talking about this one right here. So what that means is those in between dashes, there are 9 of those in between 1 and 2, so in between your whole numbers. What that means is the dashes in between are going to be counted off in tenths, in 1/10. What I mean by that is the first line right behind the 1 is going to be 1.1. The next one is 1.2, then 1.3, then 1.4. That's why this one can be 1.5. And then continuing on, you'll see 1.6, 1.7, 1.8, 1.9, and then lastly, then we finally get to 2. Whereas now on this syringe, the second one of what we're comparing here, this one, since your 1 and your 2 are a little bit closer together, you'll notice that there's only 4 dashes in between. So since those are going to be evenly spaced apart, we count these off in 2/10 now. What I mean by that is that first line right behind the 1, that's going to be 1.2. The next one would be 1.4. The next one is going to be 1.6, and then lastly that's going to be 1.8. So those are counted off in 2/10 compared to the first one that are counted off in 1/10. So that's the big difference between those two. As on, say, on that first syringe, so on, let me get my pen here, on this first one right here, if I asked you guys to administer, let's say, 1.7 milliliters, then I know that's going to be past 1.5. It's just 1.6, 1.7, so that's going to be 2 past that 1.5. so we'll see that on that syringe. You would just draw that line right across here. Whereas on that second syringe, you guys would be asked to only measure things in, and I'll either give it to you as, 0.2, 0.3, I'm sorry, 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8. So if I asked you guys to administer, say, 3.2 milliliters, perhaps, 3.2, then I'm going to go down to the 3, and that's going to be the first line behind the 3, since that first line is 3.2. Whereas if I asked you guys to administer on that syringe, say, I don't know, say 4.6 milliliters. Then we go down to the 4, and the first line again would be 4.2, the second one is 4.4, the third line is 4.6. So that's where I would draw my line on that measurement. So let me show you guys exactly how these will be on a guys. Go into the next slide here. What you guys are looking at now, this is how they're going to be set up on your all's quiz this morning. As you guys can see, these are a lot easier to read, much easier to kind of see those increments in between. That was the first picture I showed you guys, was really just the only picture I could find that really compares those different size syringes. So they'll be listed like this for you guys. So let's say on that top syringe, if I ask you guys, you notice that this is a 3 milliliter syringe. So you see that your increments are counted off. The big ones are counted off in halves. So that means, again, the lines in between, we'll see the 0.1s across, or a point from each other. So if I asked you guys on this one to administer, say, 2.3 milliliters, I'm going to go to the 2, and the first line behind that would be 2.1. The next one would be 2.2. Your 2.3 would be right about right there. Okay, and so we could just draw a line just like that. The second syringe you guys are looking at is one of those 1 milliliter syringes where they're, the longer lines in between are counted off in tenths already, so the increments in between are counted off in hundredths. So that, say if I asked you guys on this one to, let's say, give me 0.34 milliliters, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this 0.3 and I'm going to count 4 behind that. So this is going to be really hard to draw with my finger, but that's going to be about right here. Sorry, that's a little bit easier to do with your pen, hard to do with my finger on this app here. But it's going to be the line right in front of that 0.35. Remember, halfway between 0.3 and 0.4, that's your 0.35 right here. So the 0.34 would fall on the line just before that. And so, like I said, that's just kind of hard to draw for me on there. But this is exactly how you guys will see that on today's quiz. So hopefully that's easier for you to just count those off. And hopefully today's an easy quiz for you. So, okay, guys, good luck. And once you guys finish up with your quiz, you guys know the drill. Just turn that in. Feel free to take a break after you turn in your quiz. And then when you guys get back, I've got another video for you guys on dosage calculations. Okay, good luck.